Welcome, good afternoon, Sixth Period, to the special edition of APUSH News. Today's broadcast will be about the 2000s. What about them, you may ask? Everything, ranging from people, technology, social media, all the way to world events and everything in between. Through our news segment, we aim to discuss not only the major changes to our society, but also the significance of these changes. We would like to start off by going to Drew Hotel, our people's expert.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start
by talking about George W. Bush. Bush came into office in 2001 by winning a very close election over Al Gore due to the Supreme Court decision to recount the votes in Florida. In his first 5 months of office, Bush signed one of the biggest tax cuts in U.S. history at an estimated $1.65 trillion. This tax cut greatly reduced the income tax for the rich. Then, on September 11, 2001, Bush's leadership was put to the test with terrorist attacks on both the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. With the nation in turmoil, Bush retaliated by invading Afghanistan to search for the mastermind behind these attacks, Osama bin Laden. Shortly afterwards, Bush decided to invade Iraq in search for weapons of mass destruction and to replace Saddam Hussein. Bush ran for re-election in 2004 and won against John Kerry. However, his second term was not as great as his first term, with his approval rating greatly declining. Bush left his office with the economy in its worst post-war recession since the Great Depression, and not to mention the housing market crash and the U.S. debt increasing.
George Bush's road to presidency in 2001 was not without struggle, largely due to his main opponent, Al Gore. Here's to Drew with more information.
for the introduction. I'm here at National Park, Morganville, Illinois today to talk to you about Al Gore. Al Gore was best known for being the vice president of Bill Clinton. He brought attention to the global warming crisis on his documentary called Inconvenient Truth. He graduated from Harvard University with a degree in government. In 2000, he ran for president against Bush. Ultimately, though, he lost to Bush due to a controversial decision by the Supreme Court to allow Florida to recount their votes.
In 2008, the United States housing bubble experienced its largest price drop ever. This led to a recession in the United States and one of the worst economic disasters since the Great Depression. The housing bubble was caused by the irresponsibility of banks, which lent American homebuyers large loans to purchase homes which they could not afford. This led to the foreclosure of many homes and banks losing large amounts of money. Both Democrats and Republicans claimed that the housing bubble crisis was caused by their reckless government policies. The recession proved to be one of the main topics of discussion during the 2008 presidential election.
Technological innovations ushered in a new way of travel, convenience, and most of all, communication. Among the most prominent inventions of the 2000s include the GPS, the smartphones, wireless internet, and electric cars. Let's take a look.
Smartphones played a pivotal part in the new tech culture of the world. Although smartphone creation began in the early 1990s, the true ascension of the device wouldn't be realized until the 2000s. Early smartphones such as Blackberries and iPhones brought a new wave across the world, presenting phones that are capable of more than just talking and texting. Ultimately, with smartphones came new apps which not only contributed to social media, but allowed for a higher form of communication with one another. Since the looming global warming crisis, researchers across the world look for an alternative form of transportation to combat pollution. Hybrid cars offered an outlet for a less pollutive way of traveling. Although hybrid cars were an idea first presented in the 20th century, its rise in the market was during the 2000s. Toyota launched the Prius in 2001, and it was soon soared to become the pioneers of hybrid engineering. It would offer almost twice the mileage in a regular vehicle. What's more, the government soon began offering incentives for buying hybrid vehicles, offering multiple forms of tax credits throughout the decade. Hybrid cars would usher in a new stage of economic and technological advancement. One of the greatest innovations of the 21st century was the Wi-Fi system. Although it was first created in the late 1990s, it wasn't until early 2000s that it dominated society. From libraries to schools, Wi-Fi became a need throughout society, offering a gateway to the internet and consequently, communication.
Wikipedia was founded in 2005 by Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger. Wikipedia is a free encyclopedia collaboratively written by the people who use it. It is a special type of website designed to make collaboration easy. A lot of people are constantly improving Wikipedia, making thousands of changes per hour. With the turn of the 21st century, a lot of technological advancement took place. Because internet became common in almost every household, social media became a big part of American culture. YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter, to name a few, are all social media sites that have taken the internet world by storm. MySpace is a place where you can create a profile page that you can use to meet new friends, and it kindled the thirst for social media. A year later, the social media giant Facebook was created, and people from anywhere in the world could interact with each other. Facebook was created by Mark Zuckerberg, who also became a great American icon. In 2005, Twitter and YouTube were created. YouTube allowed billions of people to discover, watch, and share originally created videos. Twitter is a social networking and microblogging service that you use to communicate with others by sending short text messages, 140 characters in length, called tweets, to your friends or your followers. Social media has become a way for Americans to communicate with each other and express who they are and their beliefs. Who knows what the next big thing in social media is, but I'm sure looking forward to it.
Hip-hop experienced unprecedented popularity during the 2000s. Various artists such as Eminem, 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Kanye West, and many others proved to be extremely popular throughout the decade. These artists greatly impacted many Americans through their messages on fashion and money, which led to the emergence of alternative hip-hop, which included artists such as Lupe Fiasco and Common. These artists chose to denounce the messages on fashion and money, which more traditional hip-hop artists were spreading. These artists were more related to the old-school hip-hop artists of the 1990s. Rock, which was very popular during the 1990s, continued its success throughout the 2000s. Bands such as the Foo Fighters, Nickelback, and Green Day were very popular. The rock scene led to the emergence of subgenres such as heavy metal, punk, and indie rock. Heavy metal bands such as System of a Down, Papa Roach, Disturbed, and Linkin Park experienced success as well. Punk bands included Green Day, Blink-182, Simple Plan, Fall Out Boy, and the All-American Rejects. These bands proved to be more mainstream than others, which was shown through their more frequent radio playing. Punk bands proved to be some of the most successful music acts of the 2000s and greatly impacted the teenage population of America through their appearances on MTV. Indie rock bands that emerged during the 2000s included The Killers, MGMT, and the White Stripes. These bands proved to be rather unique in their style of dress and impacted many teens across America. These bands were very rarely played on the radio, but still grabbed the attention of many Americans. Teen pop was very prevalent during the 2000s. Britney Spears, who emerged as a pop star in the late 1990s, continued her success in the early 2000s with her second studio album, Oops, I Did It Again. Canadian pop star Avril Lavigne experienced great success in America with their music by selling vast numbers of albums in the US. Adult contemporary music gained a significant following during the 2000s with artists such as the British band Coldplay, Beyoncé, Rihanna, and Alicia Keys. These music acts of the 2000s were some of the most popular ones with their frequent appearances on the US music billboard. The emergence and continued dominance of these music genres showed the diversity in the American music industry, but also showed the distinctly separate cultures in American society.
I'm here today in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. As we survey the current surroundings, thousands of buildings are in a dilapidated state due to the extreme damage the hurricane has caused. Thousands of families have also been displaced due to the flooding caused by the failure of the levees. It is estimated that the cost of repairs so far will total over $100 billion. And although this has not yet been confirmed, the death count is estimated to be over 1,300 people. We will keep you guys updated as the story progresses in the next few days. Best of wishes to all the families as we pray for the recovery.
With the breach of 3 levees protecting New Orleans, the landscape of the city has changed dramatically, tragically, and perhaps irreversibly. There's now over 25 feet of water where there was once city streets and thriving neighborhoods.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a black family it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food. And you know, it's been 5 days because most of the people are black. And even for me to complain about, I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give, and just to imagine if I was down there, and those are my people down there. So anybody out there that wants to do anything that we can help with the setup, the way America is set up to help the poor, the black people, the less well off as slow as possible. I mean, Red Cross is doing everything they can. We already realize a lot of the people that could help are at war right now, fighting another way, and they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
September 11, 2001, Osama bin Laden orchestrates an event of terrorism that would shake the foundations of American security. Financed by the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, 19 extremists took control of 4 American Airlines Boeing 767 jet airliners. The first plane hit the North World Trade Tower at approximately 8:45 a.m. And soon after, most news broadcasters and the world trained their eyes on the devastation. 10 minutes later, a second plane hit the South Tower around the 60th floor, trapping many people on higher floors. An hour after the first attack, another plane hit the west end of the Pentagon. These events prompted a presidential response from President George W. Bush, who pledged justice for those who died. The situation could have been worse if a group of passengers on the fourth plane did not attack terrorists, possibly headed for Washington, D.C. or further targets. Their extreme act of bravery ended with the crash of the plane with no survivors.
Saddam Hussein held power in Iraq for over 20 years. In that time span, he became the center of attention for the U.S. Following the Gulf War, Hussein refused the United Nations from searching his presidential palace, which led to great tension. U.S. passed the Iraq Liberation Act in 1998, which committed to overthrow Hussein. When George Bush came into power, he started the war in Iraq to seize weapons of mass destruction and to capture and overthrow Saddam Hussein's tyranny. On December 13, 2003, Saddam Hussein was finally captured by the U.S. military. In the following years after his capture, Hussein was put on trial and tried of crimes against humanity. He was finally executed on December 30th, 2006.
Now we move on to one of the most feared terrorists in the 21st century, Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden was born on March 10, 1957, and was one of 54 children in a very wealthy family. In his early 20s, he became a major patron of the war effort against the Soviets. He formed his terrorist group called Al-Qaeda in 1991. Since then, he denounced Western influence and became a strict Islamic, and declared a holy war on the U.S. He had executed many terrorist attacks since finding Al-Qaeda, but the biggest were the 9/11 attacks on the U.S., which afterwards he went into hiding for 10 years.
Don't wait. Calm down. The war in Afghanistan was caused by the terrorist incidents since and following the 9/11 attacks. George Bush demanded that the Taliban hand over Osama bin Laden and expel Al-Qaeda, but the Taliban declined to extradite him without evidence of his involvement in the 9/11 attacks, and so the U.S. refused further negotiation and launched Operation Enduring Freedom on October 7, 2001, which started the war. This has been the longest war in U.S. history and still continues today. This war, along with the Iraqi war, would also contribute to the U.S. recession.
The Iraq War was a conflict which lasted from 2003 till 2011. There were two phases. The first phase was from March till April 2003, and the U.S. and British troops invaded Iraq and dismantled their military regime. The U.S. believed that Iraq housed alleged weapons of mass destruction, which posed as a threat to U.S. and its regional allies. It was also an attack towards the Iraqi government in an attempt to overthrow Saddam Hussein's tyrannical government power. In April, the second phase began, in which U.S. troops occupied Iraq to stop the insurgencies and stabilize the country. The U.S. also implemented a pro-Western regime in the Iraqi nation. America left Iraq in December 2011. This war would consequently contribute to the growing recession.
The Abu Ghraib prison was the former site where Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein would execute and torture inmates. During the Iraq War, the United States used this facility to torture war criminals. These malicious acts led to worldwide notoriety of the prison.